Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the BVI Pilots podcast. Johnny is not here for this episode segment, however I'm sure he will be here later for the other segment where we discuss the news. But Marshall is here, he's going to stand in for Johnny in this first segment. Hey Marshall.
I'm in the live room for this one, just to get it going, because we've been holding for a while.
We're on a bit of a tight schedule.
That's all I'm going to say.
So with us is Andy today to talk about the latest developments of TFM. Welcome along.
Hello again.
So since we last spoke... Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just saying, unfortunately, Jason couldn't be here today either, so we're on a skeleton crew.
Yeah. we'll make it through. We'll be alright. We got enough expertise here. So yeah, since we last spoke, the plans were to begin the tramp functionality and to continue the moving over of the code from TFM to TFM.net with the new version. Let's start with the FS tramp functionality. How far has that come since then?
So, as far as the tramp replacement, we haven't... okay, so we've gotten very far, but we haven't gotten very much coding done. And what I mean by that is there was some big to-do thing about whether Navigraph was going to make it into this build, at least for now, or whether it was going to be Aerosoft nav data. And so, making things short, we actually ended up getting Navigraph after we almost committed to nav data. So we got Navigraph now, and
good.
The database for it is in a branch in the GitHub repository, ready for me to work on. I've been drawing some plans up for flight planning and how that's going to look, how to connect that into the airplane itself, and we have some ideas on some more details on how that might look or how that might not look.
Yeah, and I know that the avionics tab has come a long way. That's pretty much near complete, right? It's especially the skeleton of it is all there, the layout, the two layouts actually.
Yeah, so as far as the avionics tabs are concerned, both of them are completely finished. They're wired up, they work. I tested comms and transponder on VATSIM so I could get a good idea if they were working or not. And took it for a spin without tramp interfering with the headings and altitudes and things like that, and it does work. So far as those two tabs are concerned, there are settings now, so the settings aren't completely finished, but you can go into settings and then under general, and you can choose the properties grid view, or you can choose the simplified view, which the simplified view is the one that's on by default. So they are wired up and ready to go. You can monitor with them, but you cannot fly with it yet.
So in general, would you say that the simplified version is better for screen readers, and the grid is very usable for Braille display users?
So TFM itself was originally based on the screen reader model, so it would output text to you, your screen reader or SAPI5. And in certain cases it does both now, especially with the ILS glide slopes. We have been talking for the past couple of weeks or so about Braille Support, and it is fairly easy to add Braille Support. I had created some infrastructure, so adding and removing Braille Support is fairly easy. It can be done all in one place and not be scattered all the way throughout the code. So the Braille Support actually is coming along a lot faster than we originally would have thought it was going to.
You go ahead, Marshall. You had something to say?
Yeah. I was just gonna ask. What you actually did when it came to, because you said you did something without Tramp interfering. Did you have a flight plan loaded into it, and once you were done testing, just tell it to do its thing, or did you just crash the plane afterwards? What happened?
Okay, so basically what I did is I loaded a flight plan into Tramp. And it was one that I was fairly familiar with. And then I did flight plan M1 and removed the check boxes to tell Tramp control all of the avionics like heading, altitude, things like that. And
I see.
Yeah, and while I was flying the flight plan, I just put random values in there to see if it would actually take, and it took.
Okay, it sounds like it's coming along.
I see, yeah.
And so, the second part of it, I know Jason probably does more on this side, but I'm sure you know the ins and outs of it as well, is the conversion of old TFM features to the new .NET framework. I know there's been a lot of focus on perfecting the ILS reading. Has that been the main thing over the past few weeks?
So, pretty much basically what's going on with that, we're almost finished converting the TFM old Python version to the new one. The only thing that's left is possibly tying up some loose ends with some bugs and finishing up a couple of features here and there. The focus right now is ILS and glide slope problems. So there's a lot of people that have been reporting that they've gotten false readings. So if you take off, people have said, well, I shouldn't get an ILS indicator or a localizer when I take off from a runway. I should not get one 30,000 feet up in the air, or I should not get one 200 miles out from the airport either. So, what we have to do is figure out some reasonable method of being able to detect when the airplane is on a descent and when it is, say, a fairly reasonable distance away from the airport before we expose that. And that has been the focus of the old TFM right now.
Yeah, we said on last week's, or whenever it was, the last podcast, that, it was coming up to a stage where TFM.net is mostly usable for monitoring, just as the old TFM was. But I would say to people, since we've had some comments and things, that it is not guaranteed to work. If you come across something that doesn't work in a particular build, it is still pre-release. It's whether it's a glide slope problem or something else, it may not always be TFM. It may be something you're doing, but if it is TFM, that is still to be expected.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically right now we are in pre-alpha stage. We haven't even come across the beta stage yet.
Mm-hmm.
Beta stages won't become a thing until the whole entire core feature set with flight planning, the old version of the Python code, and it can fly itself. Basically, once it can do all of that and we can kick Tramp out the door on a flight, then it will become beta. And as far as issues and things are concerned, there has been a lot of things going on, and what I would recommend to people, and I should probably take one step further and insist that people should use the GitHub repository issues queue. If you're inside of TFM's main window, all you have to do is press Control-Shift-I, and it will take you directly to that page. And we ask that you do that because the old idea of if it wasn't written, it does not exist can occur very quickly inside of software development. So if you put something on WhatsApp and we lose the message and don't get to you, then we don't get to you. So if you put it in GitHub repository, it'll always be there.
Yeah, the way I've tried to do it is use the WhatsApp for discussion. Maybe we're discussing whether something could be done or whether a feature is working in the way it is supposed to, and then follow up on GitHub. But I guess, WhatsApp, it's not guaranteed. But we had some exciting news come through from you about the Taxiways database. What's going on with the possible future taxi functionality?
So as far as this is the two main hot topics, flight planning and taxiing. So we can start with taxiing first.
Yeah.
So originally the .NET library that we used to connect to FSUI PC did not have Taxiways Database included in it. And when I had brought up the ability to taxi manually, Jason thought, well, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but he went to the guy who wrote the .NET library that we use and asked him if he could include Taxiways Database. Well, a couple of weeks later, he came back and said, here's your Taxiways Database. It showed us how to use it, so it's actually in place right now. You can't manually taxi or anything, but there is a new Where Am I feature that will... It shows you what might be possible. So if you press right bracket Shift C, when you're at an airport on the ground, it will tell you either one, you're on a taxiway and what the name is. It will tell you you're on a runway and what the name is. Or it will tell you you're in a gate and what the gate name is. So that will always be available to you. If you are not on any of those, i.e. like you're in the ground, you're in the air, it will give you the latitude and longitude and
or you've crashed into the ground.
Yeah. But if you're in the air and you press right bracket Shift C, it will give you your current latitude and longitude.
Definitely sounds like the start of something, yeah.
Yeah, as far as taxiing is concerned, since we have the database of taxiways now, it is possible to do a whole bunch of things. It has just about anything and everything you would want to know about a taxiway. He actually included a lot more than what we asked for, so that will work good for our taxiing project.
And then after that we have the flight planning tab, which is just starting to be worked on. I know there's also some options in the menu for that already, which probably aren't doing anything, but they are there. So what's the next thing with flight planning?
So for flight planning, right now there is a plan menu that has menu options for open, save as, quit. And the tools, none of them do anything right now. In the tools menu, you have like the A-to-A aircraft manager, and you have aircraft profiles, and a few other things. Those do not do anything right now. So the idea is that we will handle our own flight planning processes, and we are going to keep the GPS system in the plane itself disconnected from our system like Tramp does. And the reason why is because the GPS in the airplane does not expose the SID and star waypoints. It will only give you the last waypoint in a SID and the first waypoint in a star. So if you're just taking off the ground, you're at 300 feet, and you hit right bracket W, that is not your next waypoint. That is the last waypoint in the SID. There could be 300 or 400, waypoints in between. You never know unless you look at the waypoints list. Mm-hmm. So the idea there is when we do right bracket W, not to pull it from the GPS inside of the plane, but to pull it from the currently running flight plan in TFM. And that will be able to give you your SID and star waypoints. There's also talk about being able to access the waypoint restrictions that are on a SID or a star, because usually your en route waypoints don't have restrictions on them. So what you would be able to do is if you did right bracket W, and it would give you your waypoint information, and then there would be a notation at the end that says has restrictions. And if you press a certain hotkey which hasn't been defined yet, then it will outline those restrictions to you, so you know what your plane is actually doing, rather than, what the hell is my plane doing? I don't get it. Why is it like Johnny, for an example, a week or so ago, he was flying out of South Korea, and his plane was like flying at 5,000 feet forever and ever, and it slowed down to 180, almost the stall out point. And he's like, what the heck is going on? Well, they were waypoint.
Wow.
Yeah, they were waypoint restrictions. But how are we to know? So instead of being confused about your airplane, if you did right bracket W, it would say XYZ, next waypoint XYZ, give the standard stuff, has restrictions. Okay, you get the restrictions list, and it says fly 5,000 feet at 180 knots for the next 10 miles.
Yeah.
Or until next waypoint. Well, when you get to that particular waypoint, then you could do it again, and it will tell you again what it is. So that's in the works. The other plan part is to, when you open a flight plan file, it will ask you, does this particular file have SIDs and stars, say, defined by SimBrief? If you answer yes, it will ask you for the SID and the star. And when you hit continue, it will load the waypoints from that SID and star into the flight plan. Delete the copy. That way, all you have to do is go into the procedures tab and associate an approach. If you answer no to the question, say maybe you have no procs from SimBrief or something, then you can just answer no and then manually assign them yourself. But that saves a lot of time, a lot of confusion for people, because I'm finding, and I'm sure everyone else is finding, it's very difficult and confusing to figure out what waypoints to delete and what ones not to delete.
Yeah, and I know even the first and last waypoint on the no procs are usually part of an airway, but they're usually, the first and last waypoints are relevant to the SID and star, so you still have to go and delete those two.
Yeah, and so like I had one yesterday that it was part of an airway, and I shouldn't have deleted it because my plane got very confused. But it was the name of a SID. So what do you do?
Yeah, it's like you got two duplicates. It's kind of
yeah, no, it was more like it was the name of a transition point than it was. I'm like, why is there a transition point after the SIDs? It's like just really confusing. So I figured if I added that, it would stop a lot of confusion. And if you don't have a SID, just leave the SID field blank. If you don't have a star, just leave the star field blank, and it will just ignore it. None of that is working right now. It's just on the plans for things to do. So that's going to take a very long time. Not years and years and years, but we are now getting to the point with flight planning where things are going to slow down to a mud crawl, because there's a lot of technical things, there's a lot of database work, there's a lot of studying airplanes and how they work. And
all the mathematic calculations to get it to calculate the altitude profiles. So there's a lot of that stuff going on behind the scenes, so it might be a while. Now, as far as the user interface part, that could pop up in 1 day or 2 days, but to actually make the thing do something, it's probably going to be a while. No time frame, no limits. Yeah, that's the thing. I think people see the menu and see the options for the flight plan and think it's almost there.
Yeah, and
they're just
everything's going to work.
Visual things. They're not. There's nothing behind them.
Yeah, none of the flight planning stuff.
Yeah, it was just a skeleton.
Yeah, the only thing that actually works is putting input values into the autopilot, as long as Tramp is not taking control of it, and monitoring your flight output with the right bracket commands. That's the only thing that works at this point. The settings do work. There is a new settings dialog box, so you can go into tools and settings, or you can press Control comma, and it will open the settings dialog box. It is by far perfect.
Which is somewhat finished, I should add. Some things you still have to use tfm.cfg, I think.
Yeah, there's certain things that haven't been put in there yet, but we're tugging along.
Yeah, it's kinda. So you were speaking about using your own system instead of the GPS. Are you intending to tune Nav1 to reach a waypoint like Tramp would?
So Nav1 can have, if I look in the database, so an in or out waypoint will have a course, and so the course you can tune to Nav1 course, and Tramp will say follow that, because that's in a sense what it does. The other thing that it also does too is it also keeps in mind the latitude and longitude for that particular waypoint. Because Nav1 course doesn't always mean anything, these waypoints don't necessarily have like a frequency or signal that they can broadcast. They're just invisible points in the sky, kind of like street signs. And so you have to pay attention to latitude, longitude, latitude, the Nav1 frequency or Nav1 course, things like that. At this point in time, I think that the more accurate point might be to follow latitude and longitude. And I don't know what Tramp is doing on the inside here, but there have been people that say like 30R is a waypoint that I think Tyler had some screwed up experience with.
Oh yeah, I thought it was a
basically
runway.
Thought it was a runway. So he's out in the middle of the ocean here, and Tramp is like descending, and he's like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, I've had similar things on
trying to
ocean
land
flights.
in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, so there's something going on with the way that Tramp does things, where it's interpreting 30L as a runway number. So I think, and I'm going to have to test it, but I believe following GPS coordinates probably might be a little bit better to do with that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what else has been added. I know runway guidance mode was fixed, and attitude indications. So there's going to be a choice, right, for a lot of these audible
Ground speed's been added.
indication. Yeah, okay, ground speed. But there's going to be a choice, is that right, between having speech output and audible output for things like attitude mode?
Yes, so there was a recent fix that went in not too long ago where we had added the audible version of attitude mode. Things that have audible signals like runway guidance and attitude will have speech, audible, or both. So people can, their personal phrases. So like for me, if I was to use attitude mode, I'd rather it be in speech, because the audible version of it just gets me confused, and I can't interpret it very well. Whereas
for me it's the other way around. It's good we have the option.
Yeah, where the speech output is more concrete for me, if you're tilted 20 degrees to the left, rather than having this audible signal beeping halfway between the center and the left. Okay, what does that mean? So we figured we'd put both of them in there and let people have their way with it.
Yeah, or having it beep at an extremely high frequency because it's climbing out at a high rate, and people are just like, are we going to crash?
Well, I guess it can be customized. So runway guidance you could have, because for me, runway guidance I prefer audible, maybe attitude mode I prefer speech, so I guess it'll be an option for each.
Yes, it's not linked to. Each one of those has their own settings, speech,
right,
audible, or both. So you can mix and match.
And it's pretty frequent with the builds still, especially as the last kind of fixes are applied to the monitoring part of it. So it's still kind of every day. I noticed that some fixes were made to the SAPI functionality. I think even if you have the box unchecked, this was something I asked for, that you would have your ground speed and ILS readings in SAPI to make them more easier to hear over the whatever else you're doing with NVDA.
Yeah, so the idea with that is it should not interrupt your speech, or your speech and what you're doing with your plane should not interrupt the ILS or the ground speed announcements, because we all know that when you're taking off or when you're landing, things can get a little haywire depending on what's going on. And you may very well miss it because you might hit Alt-Tab, you may hit some hotkey, and your ILS just starts to read to you, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore. And you just missed it, and you have to somehow try and fly an approach. But, so yeah, we put it in there, you can't shut it up or anything. So pressing Control and all those other normal screen reader effects will not stop the ILS from reading. You actually have to do right bracket Shift I to shut it up. But just keep in mind that if you do that, you will not get outputs from the ILS until you turn it back on. It was actually a recommendation that I had for somebody on WhatsApp. They were having problems with ILS readings above 10,000 feet, and I was like, well, you know for a fact that you're not going to practically or reasonably get some ILS reading beyond 10,000 feet. So while you're on approach, and once you get to the point where you're 10,000 feet or below on your destination airport, then just do right bracket Shift I to turn it on again.
Turned on, yeah.
I mean, because for a fact that anything on takeoff is bogus, anything on cruise is bogus, and you're only looking for something 10,000 feet or less on your... Yeah. So that was an idea that I had for that, but you can't turn off that stuff unless you actually toggle the setting.
Yeah, so if you have the setting off, every time you launch TFM it's going to be off, and then you have the opportunity to turn it on yourself at a time of your choosing, right?
Yes.
So another question I had: how?
And if it picks up.
Go on, Marshall.
Sorry. This wasn't planned. I'm doing this fly on the wall. But anyway, if it picks up a glide slope in the air and you turn it off, when you turn it back on, how do we guarantee that it's picked up the proper glide slope, or should we still restart it until it gets the flight plan functionality and it's all sorted?
So the thing that I would have to say is, if you are, say, 10,000 feet or below on descent and you turn it on, to make sure you have the right one. The ILS itself, if you're using like SimToolkit or something like that, there's an actual... the ILS localizer will actually broadcast a frequency or a heading signal. So what you have to do is make sure that the heading that Tramp is set for matches the heading that the localizer broadcasts. If you do that, then you know you got the right one. If they don't match, then you know you have the wrong one.
Yeah, and an easy way to do that is to look at if you look at the Nav1 course in Tramp and you see it's on the heading of the runway or around there, it's probably a safe bet that it's tuned to the localizer glide slope.
Yeah, and then you can do Control O to do a localizer lock, and however you want to manage that descent.
Yeah. So how easy would it be to do an auto update for TFM? Or is it still the case that getting them from the site is going to be the way going forward?
So we haven't talked about implementing an auto update feature as of yet. So right now the bvipilots.net/TFM TFM-snapshots is going to be the way to get them, especially with the pre-alpha and alpha builds. I don't know once we get closer to alpha build or RC release if we're going to put in an auto update feature. Probably. That might take a little bit of testing to do though. But at this point that is not on the radar.
Okay, just interested because I have my TFM.cfg backed up, and in general, I'll just grab the new one and paste it in, or unless there's nothing new.
Yeah, so. Well, as far as the settings are concerned, upgrading the settings, if you download the new version and extract everything except for the default settings file, and paste it into the folder that you had, leaving behind your current settings file. So the way I would say is when a new update comes out, delete everything in your TFM folder except for the settings file that you currently have. Go into the zip file, extract it into that folder, but make sure that when you do that, you don't overwrite your current settings file. And then once you restart Tramp, then it will automatically perform an upgrade on the settings, so it can use the same settings that you currently have. But as far as updating the application itself, you just have to download them from the Snapshots website for now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's an easier way of doing it. Yeah, I think that's everything. So the continuing work on the flight plan dialogue, I guess, will be the next part that we will discuss probably in the next time we have you or Jason on, and hopefully you've got even further with it on that. Is there any other future plans that you wanted to talk about on here today?
So as far as I can think of, not at the minute. There's one thing I do want to mention, that there's a new mode in TFM that should be coming out. I don't have a release date for it. It's Autopilot Mode, and basically what that does is if you hit left bracket instead of right bracket and then a keyboard shortcut like A, it will tell you what the autopilot altitude is set to. And if you do left bracket shift A, for an example, it will pop up a window that says enter the new altitude for the autopilot feature, and then it will have a text box with the current value in it. If you were to select all that text, type in a new value, and hit enter, the box would go away and set the autopilot to that altitude.
Right, yeah. So you don't have to leave the window as much.
Right, so you could, it would feel like that TFM is an actual part of the airplane itself. So that should be coming sometime. Like I said, I don't have a date, but it was an idea that I had come up with. Everybody likes it, so we're going to look at trying to put that in.
And I guess in that case, if you've taken Tramp's altitude out because you're on that sim and they're giving you manual descents, would that mean that you can use TFM to descend you down and then give Tramp back the controls it needs on final?
Yes, you can do that right now, but you would have to use the avionics panel if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, and soon you'll be able to use the command when it comes. Gotcha. Okay. Which
I suppose it'd be
system.
A lot quicker when they're giving you vector and what have you.
Yeah, especially in the old Tramp when it used to lag. I mean, the newer version lags less, but still, TFM is faster at bringing up that, or will be faster at hitting a command and bringing up the dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, TFM is ultimately a lot faster, even with the standalone version of Tramp, for the only reason that you don't have to use review cursor and you don't have to use golden cursor profiles in order to left click somewhere or right click somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I think we've covered everything
just say before we sign off, I know it's been said, but there is no tech support with this, and If things get broken, you need to report the issues properly, otherwise nothing's going to get done.
So as far as the tech support is concerned, there is no official tech support. We do help people try and figure out their problems as much as they can, but ultimately, if it's broke, it's broke. It's like we've told people, I'm out there flying with John and Brandon and a couple other people. And they'll say, well, TFM is broke, what do I do? It's like, well, it's broke. You accepted the fact that you were going to run something that you knew was not going to work. Ultimately, in the long run, you knew that it was going to screw up somehow, somewhere. So the best thing I can tell you to do, go report it on GitHub. If you have a feature request, go put it on GitHub. That is the only way that we know for sure that things are broken, what your ideas are for future features and things like that. So, we can help you out and help you figure out the problem and an alternative. But ultimately, if you crash because TFM is in a pre-alpha stage, you crash. Keep both parts of your plane.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
that's
you
the
choose
rule,
to fly with it.
If you break it, you keep the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I've done VATSIM flights with it, and I haven't had any problems. It's very much stable in terms of monitoring, but the point is, because of the frequent updates, it's very possible that adding one thing will break another. So you can't guarantee with every new update that every single feature will work. Can knock something out at any time.
Yeah, so like for an example, the ILS problem, you fix one thing. So like when I put in the infrastructure to allow Braille support, it broke the ILS. So we had to go back through and figure out what to do and how to fix it, at least put it back to its previous state that it did work to some degree. But yeah, putting things in there will break something else at some point. So use at your own risk and put those bugs
Keep
up
a stable version backed up.
Yeah, keep a stable version. I
from
would have to
before
say,
the conversion started.
Yeah, I would have to
Yeah,
say
that's still up on the site.
As far as monitoring your flight and putting values into the autopilot, it is solid. And there are people, when it comes out, then I'll do a flight with it, or I'll do a flight on a video with it, or
Yeah, because I don't think there's ever been a thing where someone said you can't stream it. I know some people say, I don't want to stream it on a blah blah blah. You can do whatever the hell you want with it as long as you accept that it's not guaranteed to be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we don't have any terms of conditions of use on it. You can use it in a stream, use it in a video, tell your best friend that wants to get into it about it. We recommend that that's what you do. At this point, keep the Python version of TFM around in case you need to do something serious and you can't flub up on it. But at the same time, wherever you get a chance, we recommend that you would use the newer builds.
Yeah.
Because how are we to know that there's issues if you don't use it?
Absolutely. Like I said, I think the WhatsApp group, the mailing list, the Discord, they're all good places for discussion. There's nothing wrong with saying, how viable would this feature be? In your opinion, do you think this is possible? But messages may get lost, I guess is what you're saying. So also add it on GitHub.
Yeah, messages will get lost in GitHub. Emails will get lost. Discord messages will be forgotten to some point. GitHub repository issues will never get lost. They'll never be forgotten. They will always stay up there until the issue queue hits 0. So for those that are having some pretty heavy discussions on the issue queue, that is working out really nice because we can have a written transaction of what was talked about in that particular issue. That way it's like you can go back and review, okay, what did we talk about with this thing?
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that, if you did that on Discord or if you did that on WhatsApp, you'd be sitting there forever listening to
Much more
or
difficult to
reading
find the message.
messages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when somebody sends a discussion that's 9 minutes 25 seconds long.
Yeah, and towards the end of it, oh, by the way, I think ILS is broken in TFM again. It's like, really, go put it up on GitHub. Just, and it doesn't take a lot. Just
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. And keep reminders of that. I mean, we've all done it where you post something and then you mean to put it on GitHub and you just forget because you gotta actually go on and do it. And it's not as easy as just sending a voice message where you just talk about anything and everything. But it's important for the development.
Yeah, and GitHub issues and the issue tracker are really nice because when the developers use issue trackers and issue queues to report their own bugs, you know that it works.
And you get email notifications, I believe, don't you? Like when I've done it and you've replied, I'll get something saying that you replied and I can go and take a look.
Yep, and anytime that issue queue has been updated, then anybody that's involved will get emails telling them that this has been updated with something new. Whether the issue's been closed, there's been new tags added, it's been assigned to one of the two of us. We reply, Jimmy John down the road says, oh, well, wait a minute, I'm going to reply to this. You'll get that too.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And as always, if any of you have any questions or requests, then you can send them across to the actual podcast here, and we will forward them to Andy and Jason as long as they're relevant. And we are, I think, in the works is a live Q&A. Is that right?
So we were talking. I was talking.
Sorry for the clipping.
I was talking to John about a live Q&A, and what he wanted to do was partly a live Q&A about just simming in general as blind people, but also a live Q&A about TFM and how it's coming along and things like that. So he was looking more towards the end of October.
Yeah, we will see how that goes, the viability of that, how many questions and how much interest we get. But if you have questions about simming or TFM and you maybe you like the idea of a live Q&A discussion, it's bvipilotspodcast@gmail.com where you can send your ideas.
One last thing before we bug out, and that is there has been, I don't know, you probably had encountered this. If you close your simulator down before TFM closes, you get this really annoying, ugly, agitating, unhandled exception window has occurred. And you also get a notification from FSUIPC that TFM lost the connection to the simulator. Lots of people were getting those. Those are now fixed. And basically what it does, TFM, when it starts up and looks for connections, it will write to the log the first 5 attempts. Then on its last attempt, it'll write to the log again that it had failed. And then we'll let you know that you have to either restart your simulator, restart TFM, or both. In the event that your simulator is still running, you can go back in there and press Control R, and it should try to reconnect.
Okay, yeah, that's a new hotkey.
Yeah, I had it the other day because my, of all things, my laptop battery died. It saved the flight, but it fucked up, and it kept bringing up unhandled exception. I thought, oh god, what's that now? Because it was long for BVI.
I'm out to plague you with the unhandled exception window. No, it's gone. It's gone. Now you just get friendly speech and Braille output telling you what's going on.
Speaking of hotkeys, actually, there is a new way to view all the hotkeys, right from TFM.
Yes. It is Control F1. And so what you do with that, it's a keyboard manager, you can actually reassign all the keys. So it's not just a viewer. You can go in there, you can reassign the key. If you don't like A, but you want like R for altitude, you can do that.
Yeah.
I believe there's also, if we haven't implemented it yet, I think there is a way where you can change the default TFM command key. Because we've had international users say, hey, wait a minute, I don't have a right and left bracket, what do I do? And at first, the simple answer we had was just go into the tfm.exe.xml file and try and change it to something that would fit you best. But that kind of got botched up, and then people are like, well, what about saving settings? Why are my settings not being saved when I update? And then so we just come up with the idea, we'll just give people a few predefined ideas on what they can choose. We're not going to have like a hotkey field where you can just type in the new TFM command. It'll be a choice of some, like right bracket, left bracket, maybe tilde, left brace, right brace, that type of thing. Something that would be available on every keyboard.
Yeah, okay. I think that just about rounds out the discussion. As always, you can contact us on the usual places, and thanks for coming on. It's been great to get an update, and we will see you for, I don't know, a month's time, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe
we'll see how things go.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Alright, and we will see you all in the next segment of the podcast. This is the second segment of the BVI Pilots podcast. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Andy and you got some useful info there on the latest developments of TFM. We're here with John now. We've both been on a tight schedule, but we've got a bit of time, so we're recording this.
Yeah, we're finally able to make the schedule work. Like you said, he's been busy. I've been busy. He's got.
Yeah,
college,
your internet went down on the Sunday. That's why it was just us. It was just me and Andy because of that. Yeah, and Marshall. So.
And it happens. But here we are.
Yeah, what can you do? When nature strikes,
Exactly.
or whatever they say.
That's it.
So the first thing we were going to discuss was the SoundStream add-on, which allows for sound outside of the FSX window, which you did a video on, so I'll let you explain the process.
Yeah, so basically the process, the way this works, you guys, is you're going to download the Flight 1 software, and the way that works is, from my understanding, and Declan, you can step in on this at any time if I'm wrong. I believe the Flight 1 software allows you to buy different programs and stuff like that, right? That's initially what the Flight 1 does, right?
Yeah, I think it's the Flight 1 purchase agent. Luckily for me, because I find it a lot easier, you had put the actual soundstream.exe application on the website of bvipilots.com, so I could just go and get that, and you actually get prompted for payment when you install that.
Oh, okay. So here's what we'll do then. I will, for any of you that are using FSX, and you've been waiting for a way to make it work, because it does work, and it's a pretty simple process, and we'll talk to Declan about that in a minute, because he did it. After obviously he knew that, hey, wait a minute, that's able to be done. So what I will do is I will put the same idea. I'll put it up on the website. You guys will be able to go there. You'll be able to go to that link, and when you grab that, it's going to take you through the steps. So, Declan, I'm going to kind of let you, because you did it that way, and the way I did it was kind of the longer haul. So, give us the steps when they grab that, and then I'll talk to you guys exactly, what you got to do once you get it installed. But what do they got to do?
So you go and get the SoundStream installer, and you run it, and you're going to see 3 unlabeled buttons. And one is basically to make an account if you don't have one. One is to log in, and one is for your payment. So I had to make an account, and those edit boxes are not labeled. So I used Screen Review to figure out what they were, and I made my account, and then I went and did my payment details to go to PayPal, but you can do card as well. And I set all that up and paid. So that meant I didn't have to go and use the Flight 1 agent, which I don't really like the Flight 1 agent. It doesn't seem very good. So if you have the EXE, you can do it that way. And so I installed it, and it installed just fine. And obviously I made sure, since this is an old add-on, I think it's actually for FSX Boxed Edition. So what you got to do is fold it, basically. So you have to change the folder. Do you know the exact path of the folder?
I believe so. It's going to be. I can tell you exactly. It's going to be program files. Well, if they've got x86, that's what I'm going through. Program files x86, Steam apps. Let's see. Common.
See, I forget, but I thought from what I'd done, it was another one. Was it like
right.
roaming or something?
Yeah, you go to ignore that, you guys. I'm telling you wrong. I'm not thinking here. You go to app data roaming.
Microsoft, I think.
Microsoft. And then you're going to see FSX, and hit your applications on it, hit rename, leave FSX in there, and put on the end of it -SE, and then hit enter, and then it's going to say FSX-SE.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I wasn't even thinking about it. And that's full in it. So
when you change that, and then you go and install it, and then it'll bring it up, and it's a pretty simple process, and you just have it, and it'll bring up a dialog and say it was successfully installed. You hit OK. Then you can change it back.
Don't forget to change it back. I don't know that it would do anything if you didn't, but you might want it. Well, I would change it back in case you install something else. It might not know what to look for. So make sure you go back and change that back to just FSX. Yeah.
And then I guess the next step is you boot your sim. It's going to give you one of those run dialogues, so you can just hit runs because you've installed a new piece of software. And some, I had some people come and say, "Oh, it doesn't work." It does, because all you got to then do is go to add-ons, and you got to turn it on. So go to SoundStream in the add-ons menu, click into it, and there's 2 options. There's a checkbox to have it on, which you obviously want to check, and there's also a volume, which will be set by default on your current sim volume, but you can change it. So the idea is, if you close out of the sim window and you want the sound to lower a little bit, then you can have it do that as well. That's personal preference, and you hit OK, and you should be good. I also noticed I heard a little kind of ding sound when I booted the sim into a plane. I'm not sure if that was this particular add-on that I was hearing, but that may well be linked to it as well.
Yeah, I think the first time you're gonna, I think you do hear like a little. You might not even catch it, but I believe it does. It's supposed to make a little noise when you first, once you do that. But once you do it, you don't never got to do it again. And for anybody saying it doesn't work, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You need to go back, trace your steps, and do it again, because I'm telling you, It works 100%.
Yeah, it does.
It works.
And we don't usually promote YouTube channels, but if you want help and you're struggling, you can email us. But if you go to BVI Pilot's YouTube, Johnny's YouTube channel, there is a video on there with instructions, and there is in the description a pretty comprehensive text guide on this, so you can double check file paths and things in there if you're thinking that you've done something wrong.
Oh yeah, I forgot I did that.
Maybe we should put that up on bvi.com as one of our first tutorials. You know, as just copy the text out and put it up on there. But and obviously for people who have also said this to me, it does get rid of the engines when you go to the desktop. That just like P3D does, I guess it's kind of the same situation. The sound will go off when you go to your desktop. You'll still hear the cockpit and the wind, but you lose the engines, which is fine for me. It doesn't really matter. So
here's the fix to that though. What you can do is you can do what is it? Instead of Windows M, do Windows was it Windows B? I think it takes you.
I've always done Windows D, and it still does it for me. But I think, isn't it like maybe if you tab or something? It
jumps you to the toolbar.
Yeah.
Yeah, or tab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does it when it's minimized, basically. If the sim's completely minimized, it will lose the sound. That's not a fault with the add-on. P3D does exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. But I believe, and I'll get your thoughts on this too, Declan. I think that it handles the sound better though, actually, with FSX, because you know, with P3D, when you're going through different sounds, like the sounds are going up and down, like zzz, you know, it's all these weird wavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've not noticed as much of that with FSX when you're going through them sounds. So
yeah,
and it might just be me. I don't know.
No, I think so. I think it is a bit more snappy in the way that it loads into the view, and the sounds are more stable.
But even for those of you that are kind of new and you're wanting to do it, that video that I did is, I mean, it is right down to the T, step by step.
Yeah, if you follow that, you can't go wrong.
No. So you can even copy the text. I mean, there's even text in there that tells you from point A to the end of it. So
yeah.
But I like it. I'm trying to remember what was the price, because they're going to want to know that. I
think it's about like $13 for
13?
me, something like that. Yeah. Probably a little bit more for me.
$14 US. So, but to me, it's worth it. Because you know you got the sound. If you're streaming, maybe you want to keep the sound going, which, I mean, it didn't bother me awful bad anyways. If I had sound, I had it. If I didn't, I didn't. But it kind of makes it.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world. But I do enjoy, you know, like when I'm on VATSIM and I'm changing windows, to be able to still hear the plane. It increases the immersion of the flight, you know.
And not only that, but when you don't have sound, you know, things can happen in the plane, and you don't know about it until you're actually listening to the reader telling you. But with sound, you're going to know. Like, if you start to stall, or something weird, you know, you're going to hear it.
Yeah, and that actually leads me on well to another thing that I didn't put in the plan, but I'm going to mention, because I think we discussed this on the last podcast, which is this idea of using the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 version of Tramp, and we kind of said, nah, it's not working that well, especially for FSX, because you haven't got the sound. Well, now you do. So what that means is I've actually been using it primarily now, and if you want the process of how to get it, you have to go to the BVI Discord and go into the FS Tramp channel. It's in there, but basically all you need to do is go to wherever FS Tramp has your scenery file that it generated, probably called something like it's something for FSX SE, and you want to copy it and then rename it to for FSV11. That's the name of the sim. You're basically fooling Tramp into thinking you're using Microsoft Sim 2020 when you're not. Yeah. But the advantage is it's a lot faster. There's literally there was very little lag for me in FSX anyway. Maybe a little bit when you click into the waypoints, but nothing really. This version has no lag at all, literally nothing, zilch. But the problem was you lost sound when you tabbed into it. So if you were on takeoff and you had to tab into it to hit hotkeys and things, you lost the aircraft, and that was really annoying. But now you won't. So although it's a separate window, I usually just keep my focus on the Tramp window, because I can still hear the sim anyway, and I'll only really need to go back to the sim if I need to hit a key like gear or flaps or approach mode. But in general, for most of the flight, I can stay in that Tramp window. Go ahead.
The thing that I do, Declan, and it seems to work pretty good for me, is so I have my sim open and I'm on it. I will do Control Windows right arrow, and that'll take me to the second desktop, virtual desktop. And when you do that, load your Tramp. Now you've got them side by side. You can just do Control Shift left arrow to go back to the sim, Control Shift right arrow to go back to FS Tramp.
So that's Control Shift left and right. Forth. So you do Control Windows right, and then you do Control Shift to cycle.
Or not Shift. I'm sorry. You do Control Windows left.
Oh, Control Windows. Okay, I got you.
That'll take you back and forth. And
me,
I found it to be a little more convenient because you don't even got a tab. You just
I agree. Right, because that is one thing I've had. If I've got a music player open and VATSIM and Sim Toolkit and blah blah blah, finding Tramp can be kind of annoying with Alt Tab.
Yeah, so try that. Try to So load your sim on your main desktop. Once you got it loaded the way you want it, just do Control Windows right arrow, and then you'll be on a new desktop. Load your Tramp, and there you go. And I do that with, I'll have like one will be for my TFM. So for me to get to my sim from TFM, I do, I'm going Control Windows left arrow twice because I'm on my, TFM.
So you can have as many of these as you like, I guess.
Yeah. And you don't got a tab.
It's just going to boot you to your desktop, and then you can choose a program, I guess, and have it open.
You can choose a program.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have to give that a shot.
It makes it a little more convenient because you don't got it. Like you said, sometimes I've got, which with college too, we got other tabs open. We've got other stuff we're doing, and it's like tab, alt tab.
You're on landing like, we need to put this in M2. Hang on a minute, we can't find Tramp. It's not a good look. Something like that. Yeah,
it doesn't work out because you got to land right now. You don't got time to go through 5 different windows. To figure out where it is. So,
but my point is to all you folks,
they can reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it is now usable. So if you were thinking about using it, the inbuilt one is perfectly fine still. Just make sure you start the new one up before you start the sim, because you have a choice basically. You can't use both. You either use the inbuilt one that's on the sim, or you use the external window version. You use one or the other.
External, yeah.
And then the third thing we were going to touch on, and the final thing for this podcast, was a little reminder to you all, a little update that we have a BVI virtual policy document on the brand new and up and coming it's still in development, bvipilots.com website. I mean, we're putting new stuff on there, right, and redesigning it.
Yeah, and the thing is you're no longer needing to download the policy. We really didn't want to do that anyways. Me and Declan had talked before. We would rather it just be there for you to read, because then we don't want no one trying to change it and say, well, it didn't say that or whatever. Now you go to bvipilots.com. There's a link right there. It says policy. I believe that's what, I can remember the exact title of it, but
Yeah.
there's a link right there.
Something
Click
like
it,
that.
and there it is.
Yeah. And so we ask all new pilots to read
There's a
that.
lot of stuff we're going to, you definitely want to read it.
Even if you're an existing
because-
pilot. Give it a read.
Read it. That way you understand what is going on. And I'll tell you, I've heard people talk about this, kind of just with my ears being open and listening, not really speaking. Let's cover fuel real quick, Declan, while we're here. Because they've got a couple options, right? They can either donate back if they're negative, or you can make it up with a extra long
Yes.
flight.
Yes.
If you're doing a flight. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I would advise people, this is my personal opinion, so it's not a policy, but my personal opinion is stick away from ideal flight for fueling your aircraft for BVI Virtual. We've had so many issues with it fueling things wrong or under fueling planes. I would very much recommend you use the Simbri figures. If you want to put them into ideal, that's fine as long as you use Simbri's figures, or do the relatively simple maths yourself in the dialogue, or use GSX, whatever you want to do. But you need to be specific. You can't be chucking fuel in and expecting that it's going to be okay, or overcharging the airline. Now what we've had is some people have mistakenly taken too much fuel, or maybe the aircraft is a new aircraft and it had some fuel on already. Whatever the situation, they've landed with too much fuel and it causes a negative cost on the flight because the fuel costs aren't offset by the passenger ticket costs. If that happens, you have two choices. You can pay us back out of your salary. Policy is if you crash or have an issue and you get a negative flight, you have to keep paying us back out of your salary until you've covered the cost. Now, depending on what that cost is, if it's a couple of $1,000s, that isn't a problem. If, like we've had a few times, it's like negative 3-4 million or more, it's not really feasible because you're going to be paying us back forever, and the airline, we don't really need to be waiting for that. So what you can do then is take a flight, a really long flight if you like, whatever, and make it back on your next flight. Obviously if you keep losing money you will have to be grounded, but as long as you earn it back on another flight, it's not the end of the world. And the same thing kind of goes, that I'm going to say because I had someone ask me yesterday, for the policy which says you have to fly once a month. If you have a very good reason as to why you can't fly, if it's work, or you had some kind of illness, or you were etc., that's fine. I'm not going to accept you say I couldn't be bothered, or I was flying for another virtual airline. That's not the case. And if you keep doing it, you will have to be removed. But if you have a reason, you say, look, I had to travel, or this was for work, I couldn't fly, and I can see you haven't actually done any flying at all on VATSIM or on your SIM toolkit, that's perfectly fine. Some of these policies are here to guide you. The policy document is not us trying to enforce stuff and hold power over you. But at the end of the day, if the airline isn't profitable, you can't enjoy it because we can't buy new planes, and eventually the airline goes under. So even if you might not like it, same thing in the real world. People don't tend to like business owners, but so be it. We have to keep the virtual airline profitable, otherwise you can't enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, we in a different video, we live day by policy. Whether it's in our personal life, whether it's in our real, in our work life, in our, God knows we do it in our college life. Policy is something to kind of keep us going the right direction.
Yeah.
If you want to be technical about it. I mean, technically. There's going to be, just like bvipilots.com, you're going to see other agreements and stuff going up on the page as far as being, a registered member through the website, because we got to be able to run the website in a sufficient manner to where that nobody is uncomfortable, Nobody is hurting other people. Nobody is abusing things. It's just something that's got to be. It's not us saying we like being your parents, because we're not here to babysit you at all.
Yeah, we'd love it if
We're not
everything was
gonna hold your
perfect,
hand.
but
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to hold your hand. We're here to have fun.
Alexa wants
That's
to be
the
on the
bottom line.
podcast.
But there's got to be. She does. Yeah, I heard that. Thanks a lot there, Alexa. I appreciate it. But it's about having fun. But like you said, Declan, we got to be able to. It's also business. We got to treat the airline like a business. If we're not making money,
no
we're
one
not
can
flying.
fly for it, full
That's it.
stop. Yeah. So if you have a request or some special circumstances, feel free to drop me a message or an email on the usual places. Most of you are in the community anyway. If you're new, then join the groups, get in contact with me or Johnny or any of the BVI moderators, and just let them know that the issue, and we'll consider it depending on the circumstances. And we are also looking
we're
to do
kinda
events.
all over.
Yeah, we're all over.
Yeah.
We're all over time zones.
We're-
We're all over the world. So
We're going to kind of know if you really are unavailable to fly, or if I see someone flying for some other airline and then they're telling me the next day,
if
well,
you
I
come
couldn't
up and
because
say,
I
"Oh,
did
sorry, I couldn't do my flight," and then we go on your VATSIM page and we see you've done 10 flights in the last month, we're going to start saying, "Hang on a minute, you're having us on here. You're just leading us on." So yeah, but and we also are going to do
Yeah, exactly.
events. We've had some suggestions of events, most of them pretty long, which we're not considering at the moment. We want a short flight to get this going. And it will be a bit logistical because we'd need to get all the aircraft that people wanted to fly in the same departure airport. But maybe once every month or so, we will aim to do an event and organise it. And of course, BVI Virtual WhatsApp group is the main place to go to get updates. So get it from any of us, get it from the Discord, wherever you want it. Just send a message and it'll find us, and we will be able to give you that link, because that's the best place to hear the latest updates as they come.
Yeah, but long, like you said, long hauls is maybe later we'll do long hauls, because it's when we did the event, that was an all-day thing, and
It was
got
it was a
really
long,
tired,
long time.
you know?
People got frustrated and tired, and we started having some baby tantrums, and it wasn't fun by the end of it. So absolutely, this is the best way of doing it.
Yep. So if you guys have an idea, you can get onto the WhatsApp BVI
Yeah.
virtual. Like you said, there's several different ways. You can even go on bvipilots.com, click on contact us. There's a contact form there.
Yeah.
You can send an email to what is the email that we have?
It's BVI
for the
Pilots
podcast,
Podcast@gmail.com. So any emails there relating
Yep.
to what you've heard here will get to me and Johnny.
No books, please. We don't want to book.
Yeah, no
Just an
books.
email. No books.
Alright, that's going to do it. I think that wraps it up. Thanks to Andy for coming on. Thanks to Marshall for filling in on that interview. I hope you've enjoyed both segments. Got information as usual. Contact us if you need anything. And we will see you in 2 weeks, pretty much. 2 weeks on on Saturday. So it'll be about the second week in October.
Yeah, and I was going to say real quick before we go, if you have an idea of something you want us to talk about or cover, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you guys
or an
take care.
interview request. If you want us to do an interview with you, send us an email
exactly.
similarly. All right. See you in the next podcast.